Caution tape and the sound of construction fill the once quiet woods of Los Gatos, California. Crews have been working diligently to remove or repair a myriad of buildings that haven't been occupied since 1989. Alma College was once an acclaimed theological school with two bustling towns in the surrounding area, and now all that remains is graffiti and dilapidated buildings. But what happened to this school? Why was it abandoned? And how has it fallen through the cracks of history? A man named Dr. Harry Lloyd Tevis bought the land that Alma College would one day sit upon in 1906, with intentions to turn the area into his own personal villa. While the man was both a successful doctor and investor, his true passion was botany. He transformed the area into a beautiful manor, featuring libraries, stables, and a farm with acres of plants that could be tested and experimented upon. He lived in the location for many years until his death in 1931. The property then had to sit in legal limbo until 1934, when it was bought by the Jesuit Society of California for a mere $85,000, or just a little over $1.6 million as of 2019. The price was deeply cut due to the ongoing economic depression, tanking the land value. And for the sheer size and grandeur of the estate, where Dr. Tevis had spent an approximately $650,000 renovating the location, or $12.4 million in 2019, the Jesuit Society had run off with a very hefty bargain. Construction began immediately under the oversight of renowned architect Edward James, with the library being converted into a chapel hall, the manor being converted into a staff wing. Small additions such as office walls and better phone lines were also added to increase the usefulness of the buildings. A new library was built from scratch to hold the religious texts and records of the school, with another two-story building being built adjacent to that library, dedicated strictly to student housing, though it was quickly realized that more housing was needed, and two more dormitories were erected to hold all the students and faculty. Oddly enough, it seems the school had a bell, in the same way that many elementary schools at the time did. It also appeared to be the bell of a firehouse from a nearby town. All of this construction was completed by 1935, an extremely rapid pace. Quality, however, was still a high concern. The buildings were built to last, as they still stand today, with ornate cobblestone walkways and many wooden terraces. Many people who saw the site at the end of the first batch of construction were taken aback by how quickly the location was overhauled. Small additions such as gardens, fountains, and statues were sporadically added throughout the 1930s. The training process for Jesuits, an offshoot of the Catholic faith with a particular focus on education and history, is not too dissimilar to a doctorate. They focus on not only learning about and documenting the world around them, but also holding on to this information through the use of books and archives. Hence, the libraries built at Alma were massive and claimed to boast many rare book titles, claiming to have dozens of full editions of literature dating all the way back to the 1500s. Though these titles are lost to us today. The school opened in 1937, with the first class of theologists making up 50 total students under the instruction of one Father James E. Malone. While finding people who have graduated from the school is quite easy today, simply scroll through the In Memoriam page on the Jesuit Society website. Hours of research has turned up nothing on Father Malone. He cannot be found on the same page as his students, and pages upon pages of Google searches have turned up very little information on him beyond the fact that he taught for the first year in 1937. The citation links to one Philip C. Blake, who has since passed, and an article he wrote for Western Jesuit magazine in 1948, though it seems that no archival version of this paper exists, or it has been hidden from the prying eyes of the web. In fact, it seems as though the entire history of the college has been effectively kept off the internet. There is borderline no information about the day-to-day running of the campus, and little photo of classes or staff members exist. The most reliable source that could be found were from contacting the Jesuit Society directly and requesting to examine the archives, which tells us the name of many of the staff that work there, but little else. During the Second World War, the site had one last peculiar addition, a military-grade ham radio station. The site was operated by the Fathers and was used as a listening post against Japanese air raids. It was rumored by some of the locals that this radio was actually the first to receive reports from the Pearl Harbor attacks, though it is likely nothing more than a legend. The more interesting report is that the site is not on the official building records nor any maps of the site. The only way it remains is in the memory of the people who were alive at the time, regaling tales of the location, only shrouding it in further mystery. The California Department of Transportation was struggling with their own construction project at the same time Alma College was being built. Due to local flooding and parts of the area turning into marshlands, the Department of Transportation was forced to reroute the main highway that fed Alma College and the two local towns of Alma and Lexington. SR-17, however, was not routed away from Alma, but directly through the campus. Multiple gardens were removed to facilitate the construction of the new highway. The highway made transport easier through the area, and people no longer had to rely on the old and outdated trains to get around. When SR-17 was originally designed, Alma and Lexington were included in the plans to keep the towns growing and flourishing. However, the Lexington Reservoir was quickly filling, and the state felt as though it would not be safe to place a highway through the area. The road was promptly rerouted, and Alma and Lexington were left to slowly flood, and eventually were abandoned. While the two towns were not officially considered abandoned for another 12 years, the population quickly fell into the tens, with little but failing roads connecting them to the world. The college was no longer between two booming towns, but two dying relics of the past. In 1952, the Lexington Reservoir was created, flooding the sites where Lexington and Alma once stood. The college was now surrounded by nothing but ghost towns. Lights shone in the forest alone, a last symbol of civilization in a dark landscape. For the next 17 years, the college ran uninterrupted in the hills of Los Gatos. At its peak, 120 students were enrolled and up to 14 teachers were working there. In total, 359 people graduated from the school and went on to work for the church for many years. However, it was only a matter of time until the Jesuit Western Province realized that the Alma College location was no longer viable. You see, the school intended to join the prestigious Graduate Theological Union, and could not do so from somewhere so far off the beaten path. Starting in 1967, the college was moved to a new location, next to UC Berkeley, an extremely urbanized area. The move took 2 full years to complete, and the school reopened in 1969 under a new name, Santa Clara University. The Alma site was quickly left behind, and mostly ignored. Reading the website of SCU, there is little mention of their old home beyond a simple sentence on their history page. There is also little mention of the school on the Jesuit Western website, with the only mention being on the personal pages of pastors speaking about their education. After the school was left behind in 1969, it seems as though the Jesuits no longer had a use for the property, and so in 1970 they opted to at least make money off of the site. Starting in 1970, the site was rented out to a select few schools who wanted to use the beauty of the location as a selling point. Unfortunately, on Christmas Eve in 1970, a fire, very common in the hills of California, struck the location and destroyed many of the old buildings that had been constructed by Dr. Tevis almost 100 years prior. The buildings were considered lost and demolished down to the foundation. While no one was officially blamed, many non-official sources accused a child of playing with a Christmas tree and starting an electrical fire. This incident, however, did not stop plans of renting out the site. Soon, a school opened up on the site called Daybreak Academy. It seems to have opened in the 70s, claiming to be alternative to standard public schooling. They claim to have served the ages of kindergarten all the way through high school. Our 30-minute video exists about the school, a sort of ad for prospective families, that also showed off what the college might have looked at the time. It very well might be some of the only color film of the location in operation to this day. The school seemed to be quite small, with many of the surviving photos having no more than 30 people. However, a Facebook group exists and is active to this day, talking about how impactful the location was on their lives. It's a captivating hole to fall into, with many personal anecdotes and stories of how much fun people had there. It seems as though the location was a live-in school, with children staying on site for the total of their education. The school doesn't appear to have been in operation for long, however, with the last graduation that could be confirmed from 1977, with less than 10 years of operation. While the data on Daybreak Academy is slim, there was one other school confirmed to have rented the site. West Heights Christian Church also ran a K-9 school on the site, all the way up through 1989. There was practically no information available on this school, and the only record of it existing is a statement from the Jesuit archives themselves. The location was sold in 1989 to an investment group named Hong Kong Investments, with intention to turn the area into a golf course. However, due to undisclosed reasons, the plans fell through and the site was left empty. The buildings rotted in the woods for many years, left alone to be taken over by rats and filled with graffiti. Many of the once beautiful buildings now sit with busted out windows and a mix of discarded paint cans and rat droppings on the floor. The location ended up being sold by the investment group a decade later to a government agency called the Peninsula Open Space Trust for $25 million. Now construction tape blocks the roads. The local park district is currently working on turning the area into a hiking and biking trail, destroying all but two of the buildings, which are to be left as monuments. The history of this site is being torn apart, one piece at a time, and many of the memories made there will all be lost to time. If the walls of this old college could tell stories, and if the chapel could sing forgotten hymns, the history of this place might just turn up. But, unfortunately, until then, silence fills the empty halls, as the history of the site is torn down. May God have mercy on their souls.